And we're back. Unfortunately, we've already been hit by a crucial DNP into the game week. It's not even 1 minute in. But unfortunately, Tony can't join us today. He's got Rangers at the weekend, so he's training double hard to go and get us all some extra decisives for the weekend. So, Tony, good luck for the weekend. Sorry you can't be with us, buddy. But for today, it's just me and Stish just going to be taking the show and running on as we have been. And before coming on, we've actually got kind of stuck right into a lot of different kind of topics and whatever with our own galleries, because now, like, I was on the Sorare data stream last night with the guys. We watched the Mbappe unique, and when these big marquee auctions go off, a lot of people use it as some sort of like acid test against, you know, the liquidity or the strength of the market in general. Stish, Mbappe unique, what did you make of it all?
Yeah, I think like I watched the stream you're talking about as well, and it was interesting. I was surprised it went so much further below the Haaland price. I think Mbappe's all-round play is probably superior to that of Haaland's. I think Haaland is likely to, you know, bag a bunch of decisives, but the amount of dribbles that you're going to get, the amount of touches that Mbappe gets, you know, he receives the ball a lot wider than Haaland does. I just was really surprised from a gameplay aspect, but definitely from a price aspect as well. I think I was expecting that to go really close, if not potentially more than the Haaland. So it's hard to put that down to anything specifically. Maybe it was just down to who was bidding on the day, because a lot of the names that were there in that Haaland auction didn't show up for Mbappe. Lots of questions, I guess, but it didn't worry me too much. I know a lot of people were probably looking at and worried or concerned for the market and like what that signals, but I think the unique market is almost like its own marketplace. It's hard to use that as any kind of ruler for what is expected to come in the coming months off the back of it. But I think some good points were raised about the time of the auction as well. You know, it's coming at a time when PSG have a couple of fixtures to go, and then we've got the summer break, so that's probably come into play a little bit as well if anyone's looking at him from a utility aspect. But when it's uniques, I guess you're looking long term. So again, difficult to tell why that went the price it did. It's still an absolutely insane amount of money. Let's not like forget that. We can only really compare it to Haaland, but you know, beyond that, it's an enormous amount of money still, isn't it?
It's mind-boggling, man. And I think you're quite right, like in terms of like, you know, how much people are willing to go for it and stuff. That was the kind of vibe I got. I said it on the streams. It just felt like it was really ran up by price protection from, you know, Max, who owns the first Mbappe, of course, and then it was just until he gave up, it was just the next bid, really, almost, wasn't it, from Team Bambi, who picked it up. And it's a really big, powerful card to come in. But that's the kind of story, you know, you'll be the same as me. We've all kind of listened to the same podcast over the last 2 years, and like the perception that does kind of float around is that like that whole kind of top end unique things are proper like closed shop. There's a lot of price protection that goes on. And I think now the strength of, because I think one thing a lot of people overlook when they think about these things is no one has infinite capital, you know. No one has the ability to just continually just write whatever checks they want for whatever players they want. Everyone is working to some sort of means or strategy. And those guys, like you said, that tippy top end, it's all on forecasting and on yields and da-da-da and all that kind of stuff. When you're spending that level of money, you know, there's got to be a lot of consideration that goes into it.
Yeah.
And equally when, you know, so then it becomes one of those ones where it's left into the hands of like 4 or 5 people to dictate the price. It's not indicative of, you know, the wider platform, 100,000 people, 1 million people, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, because even like relative to the price of maybe an Mbappe rare, which still goes for a lot of money, but it's hard to like, you can kind of calculate what the price of a super should be based on like all of their super and rares and stuff like that, or their limiteds. You can look at the super and be like, right, well, if the limiteds and the rares cost this, then super should be that. But it's really hard to use that same kind of analogy to dictate a price or estimate a price of a unique, because when that auction comes, there's so many more things that come into play. Like, because I think a lot of the money comes in from crypto whales as well, you know, like the state of the crypto market comes into play. All these things that don't really come into play when we're looking at the rares and limiteds, those are more like what form the player's in, what team they're in, what fixtures they got for the next few weeks. Do they have midweek utility? How many games they got left? Those things. When it's a unique, it's more about the timing of that auction, and I think how much money the people that might bid for that have got like liquid and ready to bid with. So it is a really unusual and is a bit of a wild west of a market space, the unique. But I do think that it is almost impossible to use that as like a litmus test for the rest of the market, like you said. So yeah, I mean, it gives me hope. If the unique market is dead, as some people maybe think it is, I'm ready to sweep the floor on some speculative buys in the under 23 department. If I can get another one or two, then maybe I will enter that unique market. But as you're saying before the podcast, it's like that's a big boys' playground, and the unique that I did buy was just more to like bolster my D2 efforts. So if I do buy any more uniques, I can't ever imagine really entering them into a D1 at the cost of like a really strong D2 that then, trickles down to still having some good supers that I can enter into D3 that bolsters that. I mean, I don't think I ever thought I would even buy one unique, but here we are. I think that's just like, a lot of people talk about progression in the game and the ability to progress. But I think if you have the ability to win rewards, you've always got the ability to progress. It's just like at the pace and the time, and depends on like, how much you want to reinvest back into the game versus like taking out some profits, which I think a lot of the voices in the community that are very much like maybe negative towards the progression that's available to players in the game. I think looking at the way that some of those have played, especially players that have been on a platform as long as maybe yourself and me, they've taken quite a bit of money back out of the platform. I don't know about you, but I've not actually taken a great deal back out of it. I've reinvested a lot of my rewards back into strengthening my team. I think unless I'm looking to take a big lump out to like move house or do something like that, and as long as the game feels like winnable for me, it doesn't have to be every week, but if I feel like there's a good chance of getting a card each week and I've got that hope going into a game week, then I'm still enjoying it. And as long as it still appears to be profitable, I think it will continue to engage users. But like, a lot of the chat goes, how we engage those new users and keep them engaged. But I think,
For
things
sure.
like the underdog are a good example of that kind of thought process going into the mixer and getting people involved in that. And, even people like me that it's probably not aimed at, that excites me from a gameplay perspective. It's like, that's a really pure format of SO5. It's like, who is going to be the nerdiest person on the stats?
Yep.
Who's going to be looking at the fixtures? Who's looking for the bargains on the marketplace? And I love that. Like that, I buzz about that every week at the moment. I think Underdog is something that takes a good hour or two of my week just trying to find the gems. Who can I get for less than a tenner that's gonna like qualify for this team, or what can I buy for less than a tenner that's going to turn this like makeshift team into a potential candidate for rewards. And I think the more people do that, it's just like the time you put into anything, isn't it? You get out what you put in.
Of course. I think like, I love the extra utility these divisions have given in terms of that progression element, because I, like you, would definitely categorize myself as somebody with too many super rares. I've got like 45 or something like that, I think, at this point. And there are a lot of different shapes and sizes. When you get to that many cards of any scarcity, they're not all just going to be SO5 players. Some will be specs, some will be injured, some will be whatever. But seeing this going across all the scarcities, like underdog, specialist, and even the legends one, like it really does kick the door open, because when you look at the underdog rare, for example, now if you're consistent, and this is the thing I really like about the underdog one, right? It goes in line with exactly what you were just saying, Stish. But see, if you're doing that, right, you'll end up, what it's like now, because I think we've had underdog now for enough occasions to get that kind of flavour of it. But you will get a guy that you'll be able to play an underdog for maybe 3 weeks on the bounce, because
Yeah.
because they aren't that good, and you think, oh, he's a great guy, and maybe he just does a L40 score, and doesn't hit the 60 that you thought he might. So once you've, if you're building your gallery at first, or even if these are like new pieces that are coming in, what you then end up having quite easily is some really good underdog options for the specialist competition, because also you need 2 underdog cards to come in. Most people would prefer it to be the goalkeeper, but that's easier said than done in a lot of occasions,
Yeah,
So outfielders are probably where it's going to be most of the time. So I think in the specialist one in particular, because like the specialist, like if you're doing both, obviously fantastic, but that's where the progression kicks in, because there's some supers on that podium.
yeah,
If you've got
definitely.
better underdog cards, that can be the difference.
Yeah, I look at my limiteds. I think limited underdog are the two, underdog and specialist. I've got a fair few limiteds, and I do have a lot of limiteds that hit that, like under 40 average. So it allows me to, if I've got a couple, that allows me to enter the specialist, and I'll give that a good go as well. But yeah, I mean, like last week we talked on the pod about some players for the underdog, and I mentioned that I picked up a Keaton Parks who went on to like hit a 90 plus in the game week, and I've
Yep.
got no intention of selling him. He gives me utility through the summer for America, for under 23, for All Star in those limited divisions. So I've picked up a gem who did the business for me, but is also going to give me some utility, and that for me is like what it's all about. I managed to pick up a reward in the underdog. Managed to help some friends pick up rewards as well. Shout out to Emma. she had a
Beautiful.
she had a great win. She had a tier one, like right at the top of the tier one. She managed to win a tier one goalkeeper. So shout out
Lovely.
5-3. She got her first 2 rewards this week, and they come from the underdog and limited divisions, and that's it. Like that's what it's all about. Use the tools that you have at your disposal to pick out those gems, and that's the nicest thing is like when you get it right, that feeling of like I knew Keaton Parks was gonna
Yeah.
be the boy this weekend, and there he goes and picks up. I think it was 96 he scored. It was massive. It was a massive score, and yeah, when I don't know, there's just like you get a buzz off of. It's a bit like hitting an accumulator or something. Like I knew that was going to be the score, or I called
Yeah.
that, and yeah, I mean, some of my calls just on last week's podcast weren't as good. Like picking Marafona out as the goalkeeper, he was a DMP. So yeah,
Do you
the
know,
team that
I was looking at Marathon a super rare for this weekend. I was like, oh, well, that's quite cheap. And then I looked at and
yeah,
seen that.
yeah, I think he might have lost his place in the team at two games missing in a row. Um, but yeah, I had another little look this week. We'll get into that a bit later. But there's some good options out there again, but Marathona's not one of them. So if anyone listening went out and bought him, sorry.
Well, see your story about your pal Emma. Do you know what it just reminded me of? The announcement we got earlier this week of the goalkeeper special weekly. And it's
Oh yeah.
like, yeah, the rules were mega interesting to me. It's like you have to play a common, and the common's basically a DNP. It's
Mm,
minus 100%. So it's basically 4 aside, which is fabulous. I think
interesting.
it's a total. They did come out and say it's a test. We're just wanting to play about with it. If you're partaking the test, you do well. We'll give you a goalkeeper.
Mm.
That's
I think it's
basically
great.
what they've said.
I
Yeah, I
think
think
it's
it's
brilliant.
lovely,
Yeah,
man.
and I think it'd be exciting to like see how people do. I wonder if anyone is going to attack that with and use a common as an outfield player. Like, it'd be really interesting to see if anyone who finishes in, I think is it top 100 get a goalkeeper, right? I think so. Let's see if anyone in the top 100 doesn't use a common goalkeeper and write that score off. Because if you've got the balls or the cojones or whatever you want to call them to use a goalkeeper as one of your 4 players, then good luck to you. But I imagine a lot of
Yeah.
people will be using a common goalie and 4 outfield players. But I'm looking forward to entering that. I think that'd be really interesting. And I think these, from a gameplay perspective, all these little tweaks and ideas keeps it fresh, keeps it fun, gets you thinking. It's nice that again we get that pre-warning of it a few weeks ahead. You can start thinking about, what cards you're going to use. You can start using your lineup builders, seeing what cards you might have available. So yeah, I think I'll probably target that next weekend. It's next weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's limited. And then another thing that kind of caught my attention as well around all this is like they're testing out having rares and limiteds together in Legend. Like you can play rare legends or limited legends,
Ah,
which I found that again I think it's some sort of test. So I think in terms of like utility and progression, all that kind of stuff, it kind of got us onto this. Like, it does feel that they are like making progress in terms of trying to discover what works, what we like,
Yeah,
what was crap, what doesn't work, etc. So it should be really interesting. And like a game I used to play a lot, just don't get any time for the PlayStation anymore, but I used to reference it a lot in content. It's a game called Rainbow Six Siege. It's a shooter game, right? But just to give anyone who's never heard of it before, heard me talk about it before, it's basically a game. It's like 6 years old, but when they brought the game out, they said, we are going to run this game for 10 years. We're going to keep updating it, new maps and new stuff and whatever. And true to the word, they're in like year 6 or 7. Anyway, the way and I always think about that game because it's done a great job, in my opinion, of like staying alive, and the user base always grows. And I think it's kind of waning now, but it's like been really good, blah, 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 whatever. But a big thing that that game does is every 3 months, it has a different campaign. So it'll have a different cool name, and there might be a new special map, and there'll be a kind of theme. And it feels like now that we're getting these kind of monthly updates, like this is going to be the special weeklies for the next month ahead. We're going to test the goalkeeper thing.
yeah,
Your underdog super rare will be this day. Your specialist super rare will be that day. Allow you to prepare ahead. It feels like with another couple of steps further down this path, that it might be, we might get into that stage where it is like, when that monthly calendar comes out, it's a real, I cannot wait to open it up and find out what's going on this month.
yeah,
Because this
yeah,
special weekly goalkeeper thing is obviously a test, but they can test everything out like that, forever, and it
yeah.
might always be something about wacky and interesting. Sometimes it might be cool, sometimes it might be crap, but I'm looking forward to more stuff like that kind of happening.
Definitely. I think the La Liga special. I think we had an amazing
Yeah.
football match last night between Real Madrid and Man City, and Rodrigo
Right.
came on and changed the game. And yeah, I posted up on Twitter the picture of the card that I won in that La Liga special, the Game Week 200, where the top 200 managers got a limited edition version of a player from La Liga. And I can't remember where I finished, but I finished pretty high enough to get Rodrigo, which I was pretty chuffed about. And so I've got that little special edition. And I think like things like that is a great, for especially in the limited divisions. It'd be so nice to see some more like special weeklies where there are a like one-off edition for like maybe the top 200 players get a Bundesliga limited like game week, what might be game week 300 edition or something like that. And
Sure.
yeah, I'd love to see more like that. Even as someone I wouldn't classify myself as like a collector on the platform, it's just nice to see a little bit, something that just pops in your collection a little bit. It's nice.
But it comes back to like stickers and cards and all that, like even with these things, like they are just all bits of cardboard, but the ones that are shiny and the ones that have
Yeah,
got to be signature on it, or the ones that have got the cool picture that you're like, oh, I remember that goal from 2 years
yeah.
ago or whatever. They're the ones that hit different, and it's as you say, you don't need to be a collector necessarily to appreciate shiny things. I think we all like that.
We're all
Especially when you're
magpies.
spending the money on them.
Exactly,
Especially when you're
exactly
spending
that.
this kind of money. You want bang for buck, don't you, in that sense? Something that's like, oh yeah, that's the Rodrigo from the 21-22 season. Remember he changed the semi-final against Man City?
Yeah. Well, that's it now.
And there's
He's just added some value to that
in
card.
that shirt, in that season, like I'm all about that life. I love that
Now
stuff.
we just need to see him do it against Liverpool in the final, and I can put that card away.
Well,
digitally.
I'm thoroughly disappointed because I'm a Man City fan, as you're maybe aware. But
Yeah.
like, I'm really gutted, man. I really wanted a City Liverpool final. I think it was on the cards like 2 seasons ago. I think when City got knocked out off of Spurs. And I think the Pep and Guardiola era deserves a Champions League final where they play each other. Like, so for a lot of different levels, I'm so gutted that it's not a City Liverpool final. But Real Madrid are just the Renaissance team of the Champions League, man. Like, will not be stopped.
It was insane. And like I kind of see your point as well. Like I think from a neutral position, like everyone wants to potentially see that Klopp and Guardiola go head to head in the Champions League final, but I think that like if we look at the semi-final of the
Biggest
FA
game of
Cup,
football, man.
yeah, I mean it's a different game to like the FA Cup semi, right? But the FA Cup semi was so one-sided. It was like, do I want to watch that again? Not sure.
Yeah.
But I think like as a bitter Man United fan, and I quite enjoyed the game. But I mean, there was a point where Villarreal looked like they might knock Liverpool out just a few days prior as well. But Liverpool did what Liverpool have been doing all season, and just went, no, we're gonna win this one. Sorry, guys. No, they got the job done. I think Liverpool. I think Liverpool will edge Madrid in the final, but what Madrid have done up to this point in that competition cannot be understated. And
Yeah,
it's a final. It's in Paris. I think it's
it's
anyone's
history
game
at
on the
this
day.
point.
I
It's
think it's a
history. You
weird
know what I
thing
mean?
as well. Exactly that. Another thing that's always weird to me is something just doesn't feel like Champions League final about a game with two teams from the same country. Like I just feel like Madrid versus
I
Liverpool
think.
final feels a bit more like a European final than Madrid versus
Yeah,
Liverpool City. But
I get
I
that.
get it.
I'm definitely scarred from my childhood from the AC Milan Juventus final at Old Trafford. I think we all seen that as a kid, and
Oh,
it was brutal. It was so high expectations. It was like 0-0 all the way to pens.
yeah, that
So
was
I kind of agree with that.
yeah. I think even like United Chelsea in what was that like 08?
Yeah,
Wasn't
in Moscow.
wasn't the best. Like City versus Chelsea was one of the worst finals I think I've ever watched. It's
Yeah,
yeah, I I think this will be a big game. I think both sides have had enormous seasons. Liverpool obviously are still chasing City in the league, so might have to concede that in the next few games. Those games are huge. That classic cliche of every game being a cup final now, but it really is. It's going to be a great run into the end of the season.
it is. Especially for City, they cannot finish this season without winning the league now. It's
No,
pressure's on big time. But like
massively.
the thing it really showed to me, and again, I was talking about Celtic earlier in the week, and I have the same kind of problem maybe with Postecoglou. We'll see what happens over the next kind of months. But like you do need, the thing that Pep always falls down on is there's no definitive plan B. As soon as De Bruyne comes off, as soon as whoever the key player in the match is, the thing about City is there's always somebody really grabbing the scruff by the neck, grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck.
Mm.
And whenever that player gets subbed off, it's mainly De Bruyne, especially in Europe, then it's just a bunch of 6, 7 out of 10 guys all of a sudden that
Yeah.
can't really go. And I know Grealish was really close, and maybe a few other chances were whiskers away from something different and whatever, but it still didn't happen. We could all say if buts and maybes about any game of football. It
Mm.
didn't happen. The quality wasn't there. So I feel like psychologically, in terms of like definitely like outsider, let's say, because I'm definitely not a neutral, but outsider looking in, like it definitely feels that Liverpool like have moved ahead of City in terms of the stakes of the game, if you know what I mean, in terms of that
Yeah.
worldwide perception, because they did make subs and they just went from 2-0 down and just went, no, we're taking this. Like they made subs and things happened, and it's the whole team moving in that direction. It's not necessarily even changing the game plan, but it's we know what we're doing. If this doesn't work, then we put him on and we do this, and then that'll work. Whereas with Pep, it's like, right, okay, Brian, you come off, right, okay, Grealish, you go on, right, okay, try and score,
Yeah.
keep trying,
I mean, the impact
just
of
keep trying.
Louis, talking about like Luis Diaz there as well, like how good he was when he came on. The difference was,
Yeah,
I mean, he's such a good player. I couldn't believe that there wasn't like more of a clamber around him getting him signed. It seemed like Liverpool got that done so quick. It was like out of
yeah.
nowhere, like,
I'm
oh, interested, signed. Oh, what? Wow. Okay.
I'm
Could see that
surprised it
working.
happened at all. Yeah, because
It came out
I
of
just
nowhere, didn't
I
it?
don't know. Yeah, like
I
and he was
did.
doing good at Porto, and I think everyone is so rare knows he was scoring well and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But you don't expect Liverpool to go and buy the guy who's amazing in SO5 and just stick him in the team right away.
And it
It
carries
doesn't
on as
happen like
well.
that. It
Yeah.
carries on. That's not meant to happen.
He didn't even settle in. He just got straight on the pitch and got like let his boots do the talking. He just plays without fear, and he's. I think like that's what United fans hoped like the Sancho signing would have been like, but it's very rarely that easy when like a big name comes in. But I think that maybe Diaz flew under the radar of a lot of like armchair football supporters who maybe don't follow what's going on. Like obviously you said like a lot of people that play so rare knew about Diaz, but you just don't expect them to come and just hit the
Not at
ground
all.
running like that. Like for a January signing, he's got to be up there. He's got to be right up there with
Oh
one of
yeah.
the best that we've seen. And I'm just gutted. And it's still talk of Liverpool being linked to like forwards in the summer. And I just think, how are you going to keep all these forwards happy? Like they've got so many forwards there now, And
I
if they
think they're
sign any
after
more,
an Origi replacement. Origi will be leaving. I think he's going to
yeah,
AC, so they want a super sub replacement. I think.
yeah. I mean, I'm an Origi holder and a Jota holder, but as much as
Nice.
I really love watching Diaz, I hate him at Liverpool because he really messes with my Jota picks. You can kind of like at the moment where there's almost like you can see the rotations. Jota did start in the week, which was unexpected, but I did have him in my lineups because I didn't have much other choice in forward positions. But I did not expect him to play, and then he did. But he had to come off, and it was the right decision to take him off. I think. I don't think he was in the game that much in the first. In general, Liverpool weren't in the game. To be fair, very much in that first half. But Diaz made the difference, and for all that the player that Jota is, before when Diaz came in, people were talking that like Mane might be the player on his way out, but Mane's form's kicked on as well. It's like, who are you dropping in that team? There's going to be rotation all season next season for Liverpool. I think it's going to be really
Yeah.
hard to pick their starting 11. So for people like me who hold like a Jota or maybe hold a Diaz, or I hold a Rigi, and I'm quite happy that he's moving. I thought he would have moved last season, so I've sat on his card waiting for that move. So I'm happy, and I do think that he probably will start at Milan. What do you think?
I think he'll be amazing at Milan, mate. I think all Milan are missing really to kick on. So also, they should, or it looks like they're in pole position to get the Scudetto at this stage.
Mm,
All they need is a right mid, really. Maybe a right back as well. But the right back, like, the right backs have got Calabria. I'm told on good authority from actual AC Milan fans that Calabria is like, one of their own kind of guy at right
mm.
back, where it's like he's an academy guy. He might not be the best right back in the world, but he's their guy kind of thing. So he might not be replaced as such, but a right mid, Leao on the left, Renato Sanchez allegedly is coming in as well for midfield to go with Tonali and Benacer. So like Origi at the top of that, and you hear the way Klopp talks about Origi. Klopp is
Mm.
like unexpectedly, he is world class. That's what he says about him. So if he starts every game in Serie A with that kind of team, I think he'll be amazing next year. I
Well, you
do.
look at the difference of like Lukaku in Serie A and Lukaku in the Prem. Like, I mean, he started pretty
Yeah.
well, but he's not been able to keep that momentum. And that I sold my Lukaku recently for that exact reason, to try and like swap him out for maybe like a looking at like Fekir still. I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago. I'm still tempted by Fekir, or maybe like add in some budget and looking at Adeyemi, who is probably off to
Oof.
Dortmund. I think this is the funnest part of like buying and selling on Sorare, is like trying to figure out
Speculation.
who's moving where, who slots in where, who replaces who gets brought in. Like this is where like the profit can be made on the trade as a trader. If you get an early bit of news, or if you think you've spotted something that other people haven't spotted yet, and react early to it, this is where like the good profits can be locked in from a trading perspective, and just trying to make some of those good calls now. But it's been interesting just reading all of the kind of transfer speculation. Do you have any like tactics or strategies that you use to try and like spot early news on the transfer market?
I like not necessarily, but like there's ones that there's some pages that you obviously hold in higher regard than others in terms of sources and
Mm,
whatever. Not particularly. I kind of let my gut tell me if I think a transfer makes sense or if it would work or if I think it's real, and even if I want involved in it. Like all the Celtic ones that I got big on this year were all quite obvious, and I kind of went on the first kind of breaking link, and just
yeah.
went, I'll take the chance. I don't care. It backfired on me with Ko Itakura. If anyone's familiar with him, he was in Eredivisie. Now he's at Schalke. That
Mm,
backfired on me. But that's generally, yeah. And again, Diego Costa, I picked up his rareness super rare like a year ago. Combined fee £100. Um, and it was when his contract got annulled by Atletico. I don't know if you remember that, but it was in like December, and it was like, oh, he's going to go back to Brazil, and like he needs time away from the game and all the rest of it. And I was just like, screw it, just picked him up. And it's like, you're just kind of buying your time for then. So again,
mm,
like my point of view at that point was like, Diego Costa, I don't see him retiring. He turns up somewhere. If he turns up somewhere, then £100 for a rare and a super works. So it's kind of like, I don't really actively trade on it, if that makes sense. But it's just if I see things in front of me and I think I could make it work, then I'll go for it, because you can't be playing with fire. And I think if you're,
mm,
I definitely think allocating a portion of your trading strategy or your gallery in general to transfer spec is a great move, but it's keeping a lid on it, or it's keeping a
Yeah,
tolerance on it. You're not getting overexposed because if they go sour, then you could be left with a lot of dead wood.
definitely. I've got a few red crosses in my. I think that's one of the things as well. Is like I've got players in my gallery that have that red cross. That once they got that red cross, and I'm like, oh, bad call. I've got to play over red cross now. Is it like some people will just try and cut their losses there and like reinvest whatever they can get back for that player? But I'm one of those people that's like, no, I'll sit it out. Let's see if they come get a move next year or get promoted. Or so one of those for me was like Elias Cabot, who is like I bought him as he was injured at Anderlecht at the time. I picked up one of his cards, and the scores he had put up before that injury were absolutely enormous. So I thought, when he comes back from injury, slotting straight back in. He'd been in and out of the Belgium squad a couple of times. Like Martinez likes the look of him. He's got to be a shoe in as soon as he comes back. So he came back and he displaced like Matt Miezga, who was on loan there at the time, and
Yeah,
started playing. He picked up a couple of big scores, and I was like, sweet, great, we made the call. And then he picked up a couple of like minor injuries that put him back out of the side for a couple of games, and I think he had a fallout with Vincent Company, who then sent him on loan to Parma, who play in Serie B. And I'm like, there goes, all my hopes. And I think like this happened at a time where like I felt like I made a good call, and then I picked up a super. So I've got a super of him, and he's just sat on the bench in Parma. But all those players with the Red Cross, I do search them often on Twitter to see if there's any like transfer speculation, because there's no chance Parma are nowhere near promotion this season, so he's not seeing Serie A with Parma anytime soon. But they haven't yet. They do have the option to buy, but I think it's set at 3 million. So I don't know whether or not that's going to be too high or not for Parma. But there's some rumours in the press that Napoli are looking at him, and I'm like, ooh, I'd take a
interesting.
Napoli move, because they've got they've got a fairly old sort of like couple of centre backs there. He might get some game time, but again, I think it might be a rotation risk unless they sell like Koulibaly or someone like that. Then I'm not sure he gets straight into that side. But it doesn't look like he's going back to Anderlecht from the way that he discusses going back in the press. I think it's
Sure.
done. Like he says, like, I don't want to go back there, and I'd rather look for another move. So yeah, I think that's
Maybe ends up
another
in
thing,
Scotland.
mate. I'd take that. Take that. That'd be great.
That'd be
Any
good. Eh?
challenger move would be perfect. I'd take another little challenger move, because I think another few of my supers are already like out on loan at challengers. So like Jan Van Eyck, who is on loan at Bournemouth, who've just been promoted. If he stays there, he's a champ Euro. If he goes back to Brighton, he's champ Euro. So I almost want him to get another loan. um, so I'd be interesting to see what happens to him. Same thing with Nat Phillips. I've got Nat Phillips super rare. He's technically still a Liverpool player. Like he's on loan at Bournemouth. I said Jan Van Eyck was at Bournemouth, then wasn't it? It's Blackburn. Um, but yeah, like Nat Phillips is at Bournemouth, who've just been promoted. So does he stay there and become a champ Euro centre back, or do Liverpool send him somewhere else? Be interesting to see what happens.
I think
But
Liverpool want players to be playing in the Premier League if they can get them into those teams. So
yeah, I guess I feel like they might. He's got a contract till like 2025, so they maybe loan him out again,
sure.
or they just sell him if Bournemouth, because they were looking for 10 million for him last season, and I think a lot of clubs thought that was too much. But
Sure.
maybe Bournemouth have the funds to do that now if they think he's going to be useful enough. He's got experience, so he wouldn't be a bad signing for them, I guess. But
I've got a similar kind of quandary with Taylor Harwood-Bellis, currently on loan at Stoke, formerly on
yep,
loan at Anderlecht, owned by Man City. So hoping he continues to get loaned out as well. But again, like I don't mind having guys like that in my gallery. Like when you were talking about Red Crosses, the main one I've got is a guy called. If you look at any football website, he's called Pity Martinez, but on Sorare is called Gonzalo. And
mm.
he's only got, like, I just had to look there, he's maybe got like 15 rares or something. Yeah, 15 rares and 7 supers. And he was like the guy at Atlanta United when MLS first came on. But then after, like, he had 15 rares issued, played like 2 games for me, and then he moved to Saudi Arabia. And then after being in Saudi Arabia for like 2 months, he'd done his ACL.
Oh
So there's no chance of like a quick transfer
yeah,
or even wait a year and transfer out. He's also got to rehab for a year and all the rest of it. And then right after he'd done his
Horrible.
ACL, or not long after he'd done his ACL, they said, "Oh, we're scoring Asian Champions League." So I missed the first whole kind of series of that, if you know what I mean.
That's so
But this
gutting.
guy's like, Atlanta United signed him from River Plate, I think, and he was like South American Player of the Year. Like they won the Libertadores, and he was the big fish, kind of thing. So when he moved, I think a few people started cutting their nose off just on the deals, just but it was like, oh, he's going to Qatar and that. But I'm like, the guy's at the time on this card, he's 26, he's 28 now. It's like this guy's not disappearing. South
Yeah.
American Player of the Year a year ago, big DP signing in America.
Mm,
Go there for 2 years, get your money, and then go back to football. Like that's what I think. So I think with good profiles of guys, it can be easier to just write them off and forget them.
definitely, mate. I've got some bad ones as well though. Like I remember like thinking I'd like found a gem in the Gamba, academy young player called Shoji Toyama who had been banging goals in for fun in the under 23 side. And
Nice.
they minted his card, and I thought he'll be straight in there next season. He's like 19 years old. He put about 30 goals in a season. I thought he's got to be straight in the first team. And then they sent him on loan out to like Hollyhock, and he does not get a look in there. He plays the odd game. He barely scores. It's like if you're not scoring in like the third tier of the Japanese football or the second tier, then you're not going to be getting into the Gamba side anytime soon. So I feel like I'm going to be stuck with him for a long time. But I don't think I paid too much. I probably paid too much at the time in like relative
Yeah.
to what I was buying other cards for. But it's those ones annoy me. It's like they're in the gallery, they're probably there forever. But I've picked up a few horrible injuries on some of my supers. So like Pavel Boshnovics, who plays at Heerenveen, he's been out all season. I guess there's no point even bringing him back for the last couple of games now. But he's training again now. But you may as well just like let him rest over the summer break now. But I'm hoping that he comes back in next season to be sat on his card for a whole season when he was a really good scorer as well. So for anyone listening, maybe go and have a little look at Pavel Boshnovics at Heerenveen. Hopefully see him back in the starting lineup at the beginning of next season. Most gutting one for me was Lautaro Giannetti at Sarsfield. Bought him for the summer break this year. He's like a massive all-round scorer as a defender, and he picked up at ACL. He's out for the season.
Oh,
So,
nightmare, man.
so annoying. It
There's
happens, though,
nothing worse than
doesn't it?
those injuries, man. Yeah, and that's why you need depth. Depth is one of these things that it's an expensive thing to get. It's not just like getting a couple of cards or whatever, but it's having like real viable options. Like I've had a real problem this game week, like on that kind of note, like putting my teams together, because what I've basically done, right, and again, I'm talking about super rare division, but anyone listening to this, you can definitely apply, what I'm talking about here to limiteds or rares or whatever, right? But I started buying, as many people will know, like a bunch of super rares for like Champion Euro. I've got like a unique Dennis Suarez. So I've been running a kind of copy and paste super rare team of Soraya and goals. The defender does chop and change, but it's been Boyata the last couple of weeks. Brez Mendes, Dennis Suarez, and then Enes Unal up front. Anyway, all their fixtures look amazing this week. They're all at home. They've all got like, favourable fixtures. They should do well, all the rest of it. But I'm looking at that team and thinking that would actually be much better potentially this game week to go into All-Star and play it, or take pieces from it, upgrade the defender for like a Brooks Lennon or for something else, Greg Taylor or whatever. And then, or maybe I swap a midfielder or something. But the problem I've then got is also I've got another unique, and it's like I want to play. So I've been building, I've kind of built two divisions. Basically, my problem is I've built two divisions around two uniques and playing among law of averages. Like if I'll just play these often enough, the occasions they win, I don't need to worry about the interim and try to pick and dive like I do with my other teams.
Yeah.
But the problem I've got is this week it makes way more sense to do what I normally do and pick the fixtures out and put them together rather than having like that's the Champ Euro guys and that's the All-Star guys. In that kind of situation, what would you do, Stish?
Do you know what? I found that this is almost like a new problem since they've introduced the underdog and the specialist. Sometimes I'll go there and I'll start thinking, right, let's put these teams together. And then in doing that, it creates a little bit of an imbalance on maybe like some of the divisions where I'm a bit thinner. Like in Asia, I've only got like maybe two forwards that start. So I have to use one of them. So it's good to see Cecinio back in action this week because he's one of those, and he's
Right.
definitely my go-to guy. The other one is Youngwook Cho, who plays at Seoul, and he didn't start this week, but he is usually the starting forward. But I think that's partly down to like the under 22 rule they have. He's hit 23 now, so he's not one of those
Got you.
guys that they kind of have to rotate him in or out somehow. But in doing that, it it's just like as soon as I lose one of those guys, it's like, right, well, now my Asia division is really weakened, but I have some really strong supers. So I normally enter a D2, but if one of those players gets injured, I just end up with a bunch of really good supers that I have to use in All Star, which then means that I have a bunch of supers I'd usually use in All Star that I need to use in Champ, but they're not strong enough for Champ, so they're just like they're wasted. Or if I'm lucky, I can put them in like a Champ underdog or something like that, right? Or a super underdog, a super specialist rather, whatever they're called. But it's difficult. I think my teams. I just been looking and I'm just sort of like putting some of my training teams together, and I'm surprised at some of the players that I haven't lined up in teams. I'm like, how have I got starting goalkeepers in going into training? And it's because I don't have like a good starting American defender, and it's like, do I just buy one now or do I wait another week? But that I have a team there that I can enter, but whether or not it will compete is the big thing. And I think since they've introduced that metric on Sorare data where you can kind of see what that team would have scored in previous game weeks on the lineup builder, sometimes it's
Yeah.
like there's not even a point in entering that team in. It's like a glorified training team. And I used to be one of those people who just enter the team as if it's a training team. But another problem that it's created is looking at my Sorare data app on the game weeks in the weekend, and it's like, DMP, that lineup's dead, and it's like, well, you knew it was dead before you entered it. It was going to be that way all the way. So it's just like this mental block of like, no, I don't want a team that's going to be pants like coming up in my Sorare data and get me excited because one of the players comes on and scores, knowing full well that the goalkeeper's a DMP. But
Yeah.
it's just pain.
No, I'm with
So
you
I'm
on
just
that.
I'm looking at like my rares. I've got like one, two, three, four, like five, six or seven teams in the kind of rare divisions that are like lined up at the moment. But even like some of my All Star Pro team has no supers in it, and that annoys me. I'm like, there's no reason that shouldn't, but it's because of rotation and injuries that I'm dealing with. I don't see the point in entering a Champ Euro team this week because my goalkeepers are playing against Barcelona, and the other one is like Trapp, who plays for Frankfurt this week. They've obviously got a big fixture tonight against West Ham, and he has been rotated after Europe. So it's like, do I go big in Champ Euro? It's very difficult. I actually had a really decent result in Champ Euro last weekend. I finished in the
Nice.
cards, but that was a big score, and I still finished like in the tier twos. I think by the end of it, it was like 395, and that got me a tier two. And I'm like, wow, like, do I have a team that can put up a 400 without supers? And the answer to that is probably no. So I've decided to shift that into All Star Pro, and instead of using like Dimitrevski as my goalkeeper, I'm putting Joe Hyunwoo, um, who is playing against Gangwon for Ulsan. Um, so I'm kind of hoping for a potential clean sheet there. He puts up a lot of clean sheets. They didn't put one up today, but yeah, I mean, I've lined up my All Star Pro. These are all rares, by the way. Hyunwoo in goal. Got Giovanni Di Lorenzo, who's got 13.5% bonus because he's like one of those Napoli cards that never minted the new season. Milinkovic Savic as a captain. At the moment, I've got Jota as my forward, and I think this is the potential risk. But I think the fact that he came off at half time, maybe they'll rest someone else. But they've got Tottenham on the
Yeah, yeah.
weekend. It's not an easy game, so maybe,
You want to win it all now.
yeah. So now I'm like looking at that. Do I need to switch out Jota? What I might have to look at what options I've got. And my fifth player is Koulibaly, who again is 13.5%
Exactly.
bonus. So yeah, I think maybe if I swap Jota out, but again, it's just looking at Division 3 entry with no supers in it when I know I've got supers in my gallery. But sometimes you just got to look at them supers and be like, yeah, but if that super puts up a 55 and Savage puts up a 90, then he's better, if not as good as. So I think
Yeah,
sometimes you just got
totally.
to let some of those supers live in the training for a week where they've got a hard fixture or they're a rotation risk. And yeah, this week I'm just shocked at how many like starters I've got in my training as it stands. But I think sometimes you just got to go with like the team that should score the most points as opposed to like the most bonus being like spread. What about yourself?
Yeah, well, see, that's the kind of problem I've got because if I do go with like, so I'm really wanting to make my All Star division basically as strong as possible, but I'm worried that what I'm worried about is playing this Champ Euro team that I've played every week and breaking it up and putting some pieces here and putting some pieces there because their fixtures are great, and then they
Mm.
all hit, and I would have won if I just did my normal thing, but by breaking them up, I've ended up fucking everything.
Yeah,
That's really what I'm worried about. Um, it's so tough because I look at like the striker should definitely score. It's a derby game. They're in good form, blah, blah, blah. Midfielders at home against relegation threatened team should score well, will definitely start. And it's like those guys should be in the best team possible. And it's like the Champ Euro team maybe is my best team possible, but like you say, it is like hard going. So it's
yeah.
like, I don't know. I'm just really
I'm
stuck between.
I'm in two minds about Giacomakis, so I'm going to ask for your opinion on him as a Celtic fan. I was surprised he didn't start against Rangers in the weekend,
Same.
so he's got to start this weekend for me, surely against Hearts. What do you
I
think?
don't think he does. So I've been torn on this. I actually just recorded a wee segment before we come on and do this, but it's not even been edited yet. But I think the manager's going to go copy and paste from the
Right?
Rangers game. I really do. Um, for me, I think it makes absolute sense for him to bring out, not drop, but bring out the team. Maeda, play Giacomakis, move Kyogo maybe a wee bit wider, or swap him sides with Jota or something. I think, but it makes sense because there's no reason on merit that Giacomakis shouldn't be in the team. He got a little injury. He's now back. He was scoring. He
Yeah,
was doing great. And equally on merit, I think Rio should be dropped because even though it's like he's trying to play the best team and kind of like Pep, like it's plan A or nothing kind of idea,
yeah,
he has played bad, so on merit, some other guys should get a chance. Now, Turnbull didn't deserve to get dropped. He got injured. He's now back. O'Reilly, Rogic, there's plenty of guys that are fit and chomping at the bit. So I think on merit, there should be at least 2 or 3 changes to the team. But talking to people in my head is telling me the manager is going to play the same team again. Maybe O'Reilly for Rogic, but that'll be it, I think.
yeah. Interesting because I think he's in a reasonably strong side, but again, I think that another problem we've got at this time of the season is if the teams have got nothing to play for, a lot of the players will get rested, rotated. So like that's what we're seeing with kind of like Bayern players, and I'm seeing it now at Salzburg. So it's really hard to call a lot of those sides at this sort of like last couple of games, last 2 or 3 games of the season, and I've found it quite difficult. Or like maybe I just don't feel fully confident when I'm like delivering my teams at the end of the week now, and I'm just looking at the teams I've selected, and I'm like, there's so much rotation risk in nearly every team I've got. I mean, my champ Euro is as punty as it comes. I've got like Tony Cruz, who is not in hot form right now. I don't think he starts on the weekend. I think they'll give Camavinga a start, especially after.
So yeah, he's in my
Yeah,
underdog team as captain.
yeah. I mean, I wish I had a Camavinga. He's such a good player. He looked amazing when he came on as well. He's just slotted. Like at his age, it's just insane. Like what a player he is. But I've got like Tony Cruz. I've got Ezekiel Ponce in there. I've got Leon Bailey. I'm like, take your pick of those three. Which one is not? I mean, if the three of those start, you've almost won already. But the chances of all three of them, the chance of all three of them starting and actually putting up a kind of 60 plus at the moment in their current form and at this stage of the season. Uh, and I mean,
It's
Aston Villa play
incredible.
away to Burnley, who have got a lot to play for. I'm looking at my teams and I'm like, yeah, I've got like an under 23 team that looks good on paper. I've got my under 23 pro. I've got Safanov in goal. They've got Arsenal away, so a good chance of a clean sheet. Hopefully, if they turn up. He had a good result in the week. Igor Deviv, super rare. They've got Sochi at home, who Sochi have had some good results lately, so he'll have a busy
Yeah,
game,
it's
I
not
think.
certainly bad.
Yeah. Kenneth Taylor, who's found his way into the Ajax starting team the last couple of games. So I've been using his super rare the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to continue again. Fancy him to start again. Got an assist last week. So they're playing AZ Alkmaar. And then I've got Valentin Castellanos up front. New Yorker on a great run of form of late, and expect him to
Yeah.
get among the goals. He didn't get decisive in the last game, if I remember rightly. And my captain, Fikayo Tomori, big every game's a cup final for Milan right now, so they're away and expect him to have a busy game. And he's just solid, isn't he? When he's got a busy game and they've got something to play for, I fancy him. So I think that under 23 pro team looks quite strong. Got a decent lineup in the super rare as well, actually. Under 23, he's got Cook, Lee Hambom unique, Veerman super. Cook is a super as well, by the way. Jesus Ferreira super and Ferdy Droif super. I think that's a strong five. So I'm hoping if they all start, then we could be amongst it. Hopefully, I think Veerman's the one kind of like rotation risk there, but he's playing well. PSV got 2-3 games left. They rested Sangare the last couple of games and started Veerman, which was surprising because Sangare was the one player that didn't really get dropped that often for PSV. But the talk of like Goetze being off at the end of the season, so I think PSV have their last home game of the season next Wednesday. So maybe Veerman starts this weekend, and then in the midweek they give Goetze a start, and that might be his last sort of home game for PSV. Same with Gutierrez. I'm seeing some rumours that he might be off in the end of the season as well. So we're all expecting Sangare to leave too. So maybe Veerman does start this game, and those players are more likely to start their last home game of the season for fans to kind of give them a wave on their way off. But yeah, I think that's it. I think my Asia D2's another sort of fairly strong. But yeah, my rare entries, I'm not feeling too hot on any of them at the moment. Where's your like main focus this weekend?
Well, my main team's always All-Star Rare Pro and kind of build back from there. But with like the kind of strength that I've kind of been picking up recently and some of these new leagues that are coming out, like I'm really trying to take it on a week-by-week basis of what I think is my best chance of winning. And that is so intangible sometimes. That's really the kind of, I guess, the seed of a lot of my headaches this game weeks because, like, I don't know. I've got a lot of what I've tried to focus on this game week is probably the only thing I could really give you that's anywhere useful to anyone listening to this. But I've on these game weeks in particular, I really try and focus on people that didn't play during the week as
Yeah,
much as I possibly can. Like if I can not play, and I've got a fair amount of cards in some of these teams, but if I can not play like Leipzig guys, if I can not play Frankfurt guys, if I can not play like some of the Korean guys played midweek, if I can maybe
yeah,
avoid some of them that maybe the kickoff times aren't great, from when they last played to the next game, kind of idea. There was one or two others as well. Sorry, I think there was some cup games in that around Europe during the midweek, but I always try and avoid them, and that's So I'm not really sure, mate. To be honest with you, I think I'm going to go with just like my Celtic kind of team into
yeah.
All Star, and I've got Sebastian Lletget next to it. So it's basically like a Celtic kind of spine with Sebastian Lletget, and then the Champ Euro team. I think I think I'm going to be too nervous around not playing that Champ Euro team like I always do. They all hit, and then I look at it and go, "Oh, I could have finished first in that division, and I
Yeah.
didn't. I broke the team up, and I finished 40th in that division, and then I finished 82nd in that division. But if I'd kept those guys together, I would have finally law of averages would have paid in for me.
Yeah,
So I'm kind of nervous against that as well. It's a funny one for me. I'm between a rock and a hard place.
I feel you on that. Are you looking
I
at the
think I'm going to
underdog?
stick to that.
Are you in
Yeah,
the
so
underdog?
I've got underdog rare, but I've got a probable DNP goalkeeper. My Axel Werner goalkeeper, who is like always an underdog qualifier, has now been dropped because of his poor form.
Mm.
So it's either him or nobody anyway. I don't have anyone else that would qualify that I would put into this. So probable DNP keeper. And then I'm going with an Andrew Gutman, who's at home to Chicago Fire. Very
Yep.
capable fullback. Is actually one of the best fullbacks I've ever owned for not getting too many possession losts. Like, he's actually really clean in possession, like on statistics as well as on the eye. Doesn't actually give the ball away too frivolously.
Yep.
And he can get assists and whatever. So anyway, he's playing at home at Fire. I've got Captain Camavinga, and then I've went up front with Andre Silva of Leipzig and Dejan Joveljic of LA Galaxy, who are away to Austin. And Austin are, so the two strikers, Andre Silva might play tonight. Camavinga did play last night. And Joveljic, should start, might not start, and he's away to second in the league. So these are all guys that, they're still good players and they could all score pretty well, but, if I put them in a better team, I would be shiting it.
Yeah. I feel you on that. It's good that you mentioned Gutman actually, because he was one of my pickups this week. I actually bought one of his limiteds for the exact use case of underdog. I spent this week having a little look at some of the best available players at good prices, and he was one of my pickups. So I'm glad to hear you say that, because that kind of validates the pick for me as well. But
yeah, if you drill into his AA on any good scores, you'll see possession losses 8 or 6 or something like that. Doesn't get those mad 25s and
yeah,
whatever.
that's what you want from
He
a
doesn't chuck
fullback.
it.
I stuck a
Yeah,
underdog rare team in as well, actually, but similarly to you, I've got a really surprising problem was Kosei Tani being dropped for the last
same.
game. That really surprised me. So I didn't want to risk him in any of my main lineups this week, and I've put him in the underdog. And I've got Leonardo Bonucci in there, who, after bagging 2 goals in the last game, my captain. Damian Rivera, New England. He made his first start and scored his first goal. He's a youngster, 18 years old, I think he is, or 19. Brenner, he's due a goal any minute, isn't he? He's got to start scoring at some point.
Big time.
And then my reward from a couple of game weeks back, Yusuf Demir. Not expecting massive things from him, but maybe towards the end of the season he's going to get last couple of games, maybe. Hopefully starts. So that's my rare. I picked up 2 cards for my underdog limited division, 2 cheap cards this week. So we've already mentioned Gutman. Another tip for me was Augustin Cardozo of Gymnasia.
Cool.
He's put up 2 70-plus scores in his last 2 games, and he does fall underneath the 45 average. And I think I picked him up really cheap. Let me just have a little look what I picked him up for. So I managed to pick him up for £9.77. That's 0.0043 Ethereum. And his last 2 games, 76 and a 63, not 2 over 70s. But his last 5 average is 54. So his L15 is 40. He fits in there nicely. So he's like my main sort of tip for this week. I'm quite excited to pick up anyone for 10 quid or under that might do the business in the underdog. But should we go through some of my picks for the underdog this week? Because we didn't get a reward last week, so let's shoot. I think we shoot again. So one of the cheap goalkeepers I was looking at, there's Pezhakov, who plays for Rostov, who are not an awful side. 0.0267 at the time I checked him out. So I've got him in goal. I've got Gutman in defence at 0.0046. That's £10.33. And then I was going to go for Cardozo, Gymnasia, who I just mentioned, 0.0043. I paid for him. I've had a couple of good options in midfield as well. There's a player called Azevedo, who plays in America FC in Brazil. You can pick him up for 0.003. Or I'm also looking at the Charleroi captain, Ilamare Hita, but he might be out. He might be out injured. He didn't play the last game, but there are reports online that it wasn't serious, and he's back in training, so maybe he starts. So he's a bit risky, but I do think that for less risk, we're going to go Cardozo and Azevedo in midfield, and then up front, I've gone for Zagreb's Emreli.
Nice.
0.0083, so a little bit pricier, but he's due a goal, gets a few goals. So, and I think that team is, or was at least when I was doing my calculations, comes in at under 100 quid. So there is an entry this week. But I guess most people maybe already have a goalkeeper, but all those outfielders are players you can pick up for less than 0.01. So
Yep.
if you've picked up
Comfortably.
any decent little threshold wins lately, go treat yourself. See
I
how you
think
get on.
my two underdog cards, or my underdog card again, I'm using this game week is Jesus Navas. It feels like he's
Yep.
an underdog every game week, and he's like, I know he's like a pensioner, but he's still like plays, and he's still like, he's not too bad, like scores are pretty decent. So I like you, or I'm a big double midfield guy. Not a lot of
Mm,
people like the double forward, but if you're a bit more of a double defender, Gutman and Navas could be,
that's a
a
good pairing, yeah.
pair, could be a pairing of doom.
Pairing of doom. Hopefully of joy by the end of the game week for you, Quinny. Is
Yeah, well, yeah, hopefully joy for sure on Navas and Gutman.
Yeah.
I've got both of them. Hey.
I'm just going to have a little look at the team I have in it, because I did manage to get use out of a couple of my players. So I only had to bring in a couple. I bought Cardozo and Gutman in, but I've also got Van Zier and Gabriel Florentin in again. Florentin actually picked up an assist or a goal. He got a decisive this week, but he still falls in
Class.
under 45. Van Zier didn't pick up a goal last week, which I was expecting him to. They got Bruges this week, so a bit of a tougher game, but a big game definitely for them. And Joe Willis in goal, picked up a good score last week, so I'm surprised he managed to qualify again. But yeah, that's my team: Joe Willis, Gutman, Cardozo, who I'm captaining, Dante Van Zier, and Gabriel Florentin. So hoping to be among the rewards there. And good luck to all playing the
Yeah,
underdog this weekend.
that's it. Totally. Good luck to everyone out there. I was just looking at the prize pool for it. So for underdog rare, we're getting 35 cards. Star rares are for the top 6, and then it's tier 1s for the rest. Always double check that. Yeah, tier 1s for the rest after that. And then for Underdog Limited, we're getting 900 cards. Currently, at the moment, there's 7,000 entrants. So it's like, what's that, like 15% head count or something like that? Maybe
Something like that.
13% or something. Top
That's not bad.
20 get a Star Limited, which could be an Mbappe or a Haaland or anything like that. You're then getting from 21st to 115, which is like 90 places, tier 1s. Then get about 220 tier 2s. And then it's a tier 3 party is HG, it's Sorare data says, from 336 all the way back to 900. So a big tier 3 party in Underdog Limited. But, we want big prize pools that we can be dipping into. The Specialist Limited also has 900 cards payout with 7,000 entrants. But the top of that, top 5, gets star rares, and this is with limited cards. The rest of the top 25 get tier 1 rares. The rest of the top 80 get tier 2 rares. And then it drops off to tier 2 limiteds from 81st to 380. And then it's a tier 3 party from 381 to 900. So very competitive divisions. And you only need one of these outlier scores to pay off for you that not, the masses have adopted or went and picked up already have in their gallery.
I'm just
So
having a
yeah,
little
good
look
luck
at
to everyone.
some of the cards in that tier 1 pool in the Specialist Limited to see what the rare cards are in that tier 1. And there's some blinding players in there. I've got Stanley and Soki in there, Stola Dimitrievski, Adam Buxa at the top of the pile. So
Johnny Russell.
yeah, there's some great players in there. So I mean, it's hard to look past those competitions before you start entering your limited sides, isn't it?
Pau Torres.
Yeah.
He's in that
Let's have a
tier
look
1
who's
pool.
in the
He's epic.
who's
Rui
in the
Diaz.
weekly
It's a very
start.
good pool, you're right. It's always the first limited team I pick because, I just think that's, I want to win as much at all times. And like limited competitions, I've never really taken them too seriously until the Specialist and Underdog came in. And like the Specialist for me is like the first team I pick for it because, if I'm going to win one division out with the limit with those wee gold cards, I want it to be that. And it makes it
Yeah.
fun and makes it really engaging because it isn't just like who's got the best fixtures, just roll out your best 5. like we get in All-Star Limited, like we get in Champ Euro Limited, Challenger Limited. It's just, or Salzburg are playing bottom of the league, roll out them, or, Bayern or Ajax, insert team,
Yep. No, I
because of
like
that
it.
element in the specialist where you need two underdog players. It really does throw the cat amongst the pigeons for who can win.
Exactly. And another thing I think for me, when I'll go in, the first thing I look at is like, what players do I have available that have got the L5 L15 under 40, and if I've got a couple of players that look, that are players that will start, and hope maybe a forward, on the off chance that they might get a decisive or something like that. So if I've got like a couple of decent players that fit that 40 or under, then I'll go pretty big in the specialist. But yeah, I think the underdog for me is I've normally got a half decent selection of cards I can fit in the under 45. So long as I've got a goalkeeper, I'm quite happy to pick up a couple of cheap cards in the week to field a good team in that. And the last couple of weeks I've been quite successful in it, so I'm just going to keep it moving. I think just keep rolling out what I can in that division. But like I was saying earlier, I just think there's something nice about doing well in that division, like, because it does require you to like have a look at the fixtures, have a look at like the record against the teams they're playing, try and figure out who's likely to play. If you can get really clever and pick up a player who is going to be rotated into a side, and you can pick him up for like peanuts, that always hits nice. In those game weeks where it's like ACL or something like that, and you've got like a youngster who doesn't ever play in the league, but is going to play against like a team in the ACL, and you can use a player that costs you like next to nothing in those divisions. And sometimes they come up trumps, if they hit a 10-0 or something in the ACL and that player scores a hat trick and is never to be seen again for the rest of the season. But they're beautiful moments on the platform, and they're long shall they remain a part of the game.
Of course. We all love to bask in the glory. I'm as guilty of that as anyone. But yeah, it should be a really good game week. And again, the surprise pools that really give me the headaches, because I think, the prize pools, especially when you throw that mixed category into it, there's a lot of good appeal. And again, because it is diverse in the field, then selecting what one you want to try and push, where you think other people might not be pushing as hard, or you're going to play a card here, or no one's going to play X card in under 23s. They'll all be playing it in Champ, or they'll all be doing this, or all be doing that, going against the grain. Those options I feel this week. But again, I don't know if it's because I'm just putting extra pressure on myself, because the European season only has a couple of games left, and I feel like I want to finish the European season with as much of a bang as possible.
Yeah.
I feel that may be coming into it a little bit as well for me personally.
Yeah, mate. I think it's going to be an interesting one, definitely. I think the rotation's going to mess my teams up massively this weekend, but fingers crossed we come back here again next weekend and we're all laughing at the tier 1 that I won with my team full of DMPs.
And the last thing I'll say, actually, on that kind of note, when we do come back next week, Tony Watt will have made his debut for FC Barcelona. Tony, I won a Tony Watt limited card last week, as you guys might know, and he is now in my All-Star limited team, is it? Where is he? Where are you, Tony? Yeah, he's in my All-Star limited team. He's my captain, so he's playing Rangers. It's only right and fitting that I do that. And the rest of the team is David Sorare in goals, Ashraf Hakimi, Leon Goretzka, and Edin Dzeko. Tony Watt's never been in such a great team. He's going to do fantastic. And this is a five-a-side for the ages, with Tony Watt up front next to big Dzeko, Goretzka creating and destroying a midfield, and then Hakimi basically being messy from right back. So this is the five-a-side team that's going to run the show this week.
I think if Tony gets a decisive this week, we should start the podcast next week with a shot or something, like a drinking game.
I don't think
any week. No, I'm not getting him dropped for the weekend. He can have a shot of Ribena or something like that.
But Stish and everyone else listening, have a great game week, great luck, and have good luck. Yeah, and I'll catch you next time.
Best of luck.